Captain Una Park stood at the front of the training hall, watching 40 alien cadets stare at her with barely hidden disgust. The morning light from 3 suns streamed through the crystal windows of the Galactic Military Academy, casting strange shadows across the assembled students. She had been teaching here for 2 years now, and still they looked at her like she was something that crawled out from under a rock. "Today we will discuss flanking maneuvers," Una said in her clear, steady voice. She activated the holographic display showing a simple battlefield with 2 forces facing each other. The basic principle is to attack your enemy from the side while they are focused on your main force. A low hiss came from the reptilian Vorthak students. Their scaled faces showed amusement, and their forked tongues flicked out to taste the air. One of them, a particularly large specimen named Grek's 9th Claw, raised his clawed hand. "Captain Park," Grek said, his voice like grinding stones. "Why would we need such crude methods when we possess fear projection technology? We simply broadcast terror directly into our enemies' minds. They cannot fight what they cannot resist." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the class. The crystalline Zelanti students chimed their approval, their bodies resonating with harmonic frequencies that made Una's teeth ache. The Mentari, with their large heads and pale skin, nodded their agreement while their eyes glowed with psychic energy. Una kept her expression calm. She had heard this same argument hundreds of times. "And what happens when your technology fails, Cadet Grex? What happens when you face an enemy who is immune to your fear projections?" "Impossible," said Lin Prime 7, a Gorvani whose metallic skin reflected the sunlight. "Our energy-based warfare has never failed. We have transcended the need for physical combat. Only primitive species still rely on such basic methods." More agreements echoed through the hall. Una noticed that only one student remained silent. Daeho Kim, a young human cadet, sat in the back row with his arms crossed. His dark eyes met hers briefly, and she saw the frustration there. He was the only other human in the academy, and like her, he faced constant mockery. "Let me show you something," Una said. She changed the holographic display to show an ancient battle from Earth's history. Soldiers in simple armor moved across a battlefield, some on horseback, others on foot. "This is the Battle of Cannae, fought over 2,000 years ago on my homeworld. A smaller force defeated a much larger enemy using nothing but positioning and timing." The alien students began to laugh. The Vorthak hissed their amusement while the Zelanti created discordant chimes. Even the usually serious Kronoth students, masters of temporal warfare, showed their disdain by slightly shifting their time phase to appear bored. "Look at them," scoffed Vex 9 Alpha, a Gorvani whose voice boomed like thunder. "Rolling around in the dirt with metal sticks. How does this compare to our quantum displacement strikes or temporal combat loops?" Una continued the lesson despite the mockery. She showed how the human general had used the enemy's strength against them, drawing them into a trap through careful positioning. She explained how discipline and training had allowed the smaller force to maintain formation while their enemies fell into chaos. "The principles remain the same," she said. "Whether you fight with swords or energy weapons, the fundamentals of warfare do not change. Positioning, timing, coordination, and adaptability." Adaptability? This came from Tool Prime 3, a Kronoth whose form flickered between different time phases. Why adapt when you can simply step outside of time and strike before your enemy knows you are there? "Because one day you might not be able to step outside of time," Una replied quietly. This brought fresh waves of laughter. The Mentari students sent psychic pulses of amusement that made the air shimmer. The Nexari, who could teleport at will, flickered in and out of visibility to show their contempt. The door to the training hall opened with a soft hiss. Commandant Thex Prime 7 entered, his massive Gorvani frame filling the doorway. He stood, 3 meters tall, his metallic skin polished to a mirror shine, and his forearms moved with mechanical precision. The students immediately fell silent and stood at attention. "Continue your lesson, Captain Park," Thex said, but his tone made it clear he did not think much of what she was teaching. Una nodded and turned back to the display. "As I was saying, These basic principles apply to all forms of combat. The tools may change, but the underlying strategies remain constant. Respectfully, Captain, Thex interrupted, his deep voice echoing through the hall, I must disagree. What you call fundamental principles are merely the primitive struggles of a species that never learned to evolve beyond its animal nature. True warfare transcends such crude methods. The alien students murmured their agreement. Una felt her jaw tighten, but she kept her voice level. And what happens when those evolved methods meet an enemy who fights using these primitive struggles? Thex's 4 eyes narrowed. That is a hypothetical situation that will never occur. No advanced civilization would choose such backward tactics when superior methods exist. Before Una could respond, an alarm began to sound throughout the academy. The lights dimmed to emergency red, and a voice echoed through the communication system. All senior staff report to the command center immediately. This is not a drill. Thex's expression changed from condescending to concerned. He looked at Una with something that might have been respect. Captain, you will accompany me. Your experience with alternative warfare methods may be relevant. As they moved toward the door, Una caught sight of Daeho Kim. The young cadet was studying the holographic display she had left running, his eyes focused on the ancient battle. He looked up and met her gaze, giving her a small nod of understanding. The command center buzzed with activity when they arrived. Officers from dozens of species worked at control stations, their various technologies creating a symphony of sounds and lights. Admiral Jin-Woo Lee, a human with gray hair and tired eyes, stood at the central display. Commandant, Jin-Woo said when he saw them approach. We have a problem. 7 Outer Rim colonies have been destroyed in the past 3 weeks. The attacking force uses tactics our analysts cannot understand or counter. What kind of tactics? Thex asked. Jin-Woo activated the main display, showing ship movements and battle formations. Tight wedge formations, coordinated flanking attacks, and combined arms assaults. Nothing exotic, nothing advanced, just basic, efficient warfare. Una stepped closer to the display, her heart beginning to race. The formations looked familiar. Very familiar. They fight like us, she whispered. What did you say, Captain? Thex demanded. They fight like humans, Una said louder. These are the same principles I have been teaching. Basic warfare fundamentals. The room fell silent. All eyes turned to the human captain who had been mocked for teaching primitive methods. Impossible, Thex said, but his voice lacked its usual confidence. No advanced species would use such crude tactics. Maybe, Una said quietly, studying the battle data. They are not as advanced as we think, or maybe they are more advanced than we can imagine. Jin-Woo looked at her with growing understanding. You think whoever is doing this has mastered the fundamentals? I think, Una said, her voice growing stronger, that someone out there learned the same lesson humans did long ago. That all the advanced technology in the galaxy means nothing if you forget how to actually fight. The alien officers exchanged uncertain glances. For the first time since Una had arrived at the academy, they were not laughing at human methods of warfare. Outside the command center windows, the 3 suns continued their ancient dance across the sky, just as they had for millions of years. Some things, Una reflected, never needed to change, because they were already perfect. The unknown enemy was about to teach the galaxy that same lesson, whether it wanted to learn or not. 3 weeks had passed since the emergency meeting at the academy. The situation had grown worse, much worse. Commander Taemin Choi stood before the Galactic Defense Coalition's War Council, his face grim as he presented the latest tactical analysis. The holographic display showed 12 star systems, 7 of them now marked in red. The enemy fleet designation is the Swarm, Taemin said, his voice carrying the weight of too many sleepless nights. Their technology appears primitive, by our standards. Kinetic projectile weapons, chemical propulsion systems, basic energy shields. Yet they have systematically destroyed every defensive force sent against them. General Kick 7 Prime of the Vorthak raised his scaled head. How is this possible? Our fear projection arrays should have broken their will to fight before they Came within weapons range. They did not work, Tae-min replied simply. The enemy showed no response to psychological warfare of any kind. They maintained formation and continued their attack patterns without any sign of fear or confusion. A harmonic discord filled the chamber as the Zelanti representative, Crystal Song Major, expressed her disbelief. Our sonic disruptors can shatter mountains. How could they be ineffective? The enemy ships are built with multiple redundant systems, Tae-min explained. When one system fails, another takes over. They seem to expect their equipment to be damaged and have planned for it. Admiral Flux Prime 9 of the Chronoth flickered through several time phases before settling into normal space. What of temporal attacks? Surely they cannot defend against strikes that come from outside their timeline. Tae-min's expression grew even more troubled. That is perhaps the most disturbing aspect of their capabilities. They seem to anticipate temporal attacks. Their ships change course seconds before our Chronoth forces begin their time-shift maneuvers. Silence filled the council chamber. Representatives from 12 species sat in stunned quiet, trying to understand how their most advanced warfare techniques could be so completely useless. Yuna Park entered the chamber, followed by Dr. Hae-jin, SEO, a human xenoarchaeologist whose expertise in ancient civilizations had become suddenly relevant. Both women carried data tablets and wore expressions of barely contained urgency. Council members, Yuna said, her voice cutting through the silence. Dr. Seo has made a discovery that explains our enemy's capabilities. Hae-jin stepped forward and activated her own holographic display. It showed ancient ruins scattered across dozens of worlds, structures that were millions of years old. These are predecessor sites, the first civilization to achieve faster-than-light travel in our galaxy. They disappeared approximately 4 million years ago. We know of the predecessors, said Commandant Thex Prime 7 impatiently. What relevance do extinct ruins have to our current crisis? Energy signatures, Hae-jin replied. The readings from the destroyed colonies match perfectly with residual energy patterns found at predecessor archaeological sites. The weapons used against our forces are based on predecessor technology. Impossible, declared War Master Vex 9 Alpha of the Gorvani. The predecessors have been extinct for millions of years. Not extinct, Hae-jin corrected. Displaced. Our analysis suggests they were driven to the galaxy's edge by some catastrophic event. They survived, but they were forced to abandon their most advanced technologies. Yuna took over the presentation. This explains why they fight the way they do. Stripped of their high technology advantages, they had to master the fundamentals of warfare. They spent millions of years perfecting basic tactics because that was all they had left. The council members exchanged uncertain glances. Admiral Tool Prime 3 of the Chronoth spoke first. You are suggesting that these predecessors developed the same primitive methods that humans use? Not primitive, Yuna said firmly. Fundamental. There are certain principles of warfare that work regardless of technology level. Concentration of force, economy of effort, unity of command and security. These are not human concepts. They are universal truths. Commander Tae-min activated another section of the tactical display. Their fleet movements support Captain Park's theory. Look at these formation patterns. The display showed swarm ships, moving in perfect wedge formations, executing textbook pincer movements and maintaining disciplined firing lines. They move like human naval forces from our ancient maritime period, observed Dr. Hae-jin. But with the precision that comes from millions of years of practice. This is absurd, protested General Kick 7 Prime. You expect us to believe that abandoning our advanced capabilities in favor of primitive tactics will somehow make us more effective? I expect you to believe the evidence, Yuna replied. 7 star systems have fallen because our advanced EO tactics are predictable. The swarm has faced every form of exotic warfare the galaxy can produce. They know how to counter psychic attacks, temporal manipulation, quantum displacement, and energy-based psychological warfare. What they have not faced in 4 million years, added Tae-min, is an enemy that understands the same fundamental principles they do. The council chamber erupted in arguments. The Vorthak hissed their objections while the Zelanti created discordant harmonics of disagreement. The Mentari sent waves of psychic displeasure that made the air shimmer with negative energy. Above the chaos, Admiral Jinwoo Lee's voice cut through the noise. Enough. The room fell silent. We have lost 7 systems and over 2 million civilian lives. Our conventional methods have failed completely. We need new approaches. Not new, Yuna corrected. Old. Proven. The same tactics that every successful military force in galactic history has used when stripped down to essentials. War Master Vex 9 Alpha leaned forward, his metallic features reflecting the holographic displays. What exactly are you proposing, Captain Park? I propose we teach the coalition forces how to fight using basic tactical principles. Overlapping fields of fire, coordinated movement, mutual support, and adaptability. Methods that work whether you are using stone axes or plasma cannons. And you believe this will be effective against an enemy that has perfected these same methods? Over millions of years? Asked Crystal Song Major. I believe it gives us a chance, Yuna replied. Right now, we have no chance at all. Our exotic warfare techniques are specialized tools designed for specific situations. When those situations change, the tools become useless. Dr. Hyejin brought up another display showing ancient battle sites. The predecessors were once like us. They relied on advanced technology and exotic tactics. Something forced them to abandon those methods and return to basics. They survived because they learned that fundamentals work when everything else fails. But they also learned something else, Yuna continued. They learned that perfecting those fundamentals can make them more powerful than any advanced technology. The question is whether we can learn the same lesson before it is too late. Commander Taemin nodded slowly. The enemy will reach the core systems within 6 weeks. If we are going to try this approach, we need to begin training immediately. Training in primitive tactics, muttered General Kick 7 Prime. Training in effective tactics, Yuna corrected. The kind that work when your sophisticated systems fail, when your advanced weapons are countered, and when all you have left is your ability to outthink and outfight your enemy. Admiral Jinwoo stood from his chair. The motion is carried. Captain Park, you will have full authority to retrain our forces in fundamental warfare tactics. Dr. Seo, continue your research into predecessor capabilities. Commander Choi, prepare detailed intelligence reports on enemy movement patterns. As the council members filed out, many still muttering their objections, Yuna remained behind with Taemin and Hyejin. Do you really think this will work? Taemin asked quietly. I think, Yuna replied, studying the tactical displays, that we are about to find out whether 4 million years of perfecting the basics can beat 4 million years of forgetting them. The 3 humans stood in the empty council chamber, surrounded by the technology of a dozen advanced civilizations, preparing to teach the galaxy how to fight like their ancestors did with stones and sticks. Sometimes, Yuna thought, the old ways were old because they worked. The training deck of the Coalition flagship buzzed with confused activity. Captain Bo Kyung-jang watched as a squad of Vorthak shock troops attempted to clear a mock enemy position using human room-clearing techniques. The reptilian warriors, accustomed to paralyzing their enemies with fear pheromones, struggled with the concept of coordinated movement and mutual covering fire. No, Bo Kyung said patiently, as the lead Vorthak warrior charged through the doorway alone. You must work together. One covers while the other moves. Always have someone watching your back. The Vorthak warrior, Grex 9th Claw from Yuna's former academy class, hissed his frustration. This is inefficient, Captain Jang. Why waste time with elaborate movements when we can simply flood the room with terror-inducing chemicals? Because your chemicals might not work, Bo Kyung replied. What happens when you face an enemy wearing protective gear? What happens when your chemical dispensers are damaged? You need methods that work in any situation. Across the training deck, Sergeant Dong Hyun Park worked with a group of Nexari warriors who kept disappearing and reappearing randomly during the exercise. The Nexari had mastered teleportation combat, but they had never learned the concept of suppressive fire or coordinated advances. Stop teleporting, Dong Hyun said firmly to the squad leader, a warrior called Blink 7 Fast. I know you can appear behind the enemy instantly, but what if your teleportation is blocked? What if the enemy expects you to teleport? Why would we need alternative methods when our abilities are flawless? Amos Blink 7 Fast asked, flickering partially out of phase. Because perfection makes you predictable, Dong Hyun replied. Watch this. He demonstrated bounding overwatch, showing how one soldier advances while another provides covering fire, then they switch roles. This technique works whether you can teleport or not. It gives you options. In another section of the training facility, Lieutenant Soo-jin Kim worked with coalition engineers to modify alien weapons for human-style tactics. The Gorvani energy weapons were designed for overwhelming single-target destruction, but they overheated quickly and had no provision for sustained fire. We need to reduce the power output and increase the firing duration, Soo-jin explained to engineer Vex 9 Beta. It is better to fire many shots that hurt than one shot that destroys everything but leaves you defenseless. This goes against all Gorvani weapon philosophy, Vex 9 Beta protested, his metallic features showing confusion. Maximum power equals maximum victory. Maximum power equals maximum vulnerability, Soo-jin countered. Look at the data from the destroyed colonies. The swarm does not use overwhelming weapons, they use many smaller weapons working together. The Mentari psychic warriors presented their own challenges. Captain Mi Young Choi worked with a group of them in a separate training area, trying to teach them individual combat skills. The pale, large-headed beings were accustomed to fighting as a psychic collective, sharing thoughts and coordinating through mental links. You must learn to fight alone, Mi Young explained to Thought Leader Prime. What happens when your psychic network is disrupted? What happens when you are separated from your collective? Impossible scenario, Thought Leader Prime replied, his large eyes glowing with psychic energy. Our mental bonds cannot be severed. The enemy has found ways to counter every advanced ability the galaxy possesses, Mi Young said firmly. They might find a way to counter yours too. You need backup methods. The most resistant group was the Chronoth. Major Sung Ho Yoon attempted to train temporal warriors who could step outside of time itself to attack. They viewed human concepts of linear combat as primitive and unnecessary. Time is our weapon, declared Flux Prime Major, his form flickering between past and future positions. We can strike before the enemy knows we exist. Why would we need crude physical tactics? Because the enemy seems to know you exist before you attack, Sung Ho replied patiently. The battle reports show they change course just before temporal attacks begin. They have learned to predict your methods. Meanwhile, Intelligence Officer Won Ho Nam worked in the Coalition's Data Analysis Center, studying everything the galaxy knew about the predecessors. What he found painted a disturbing picture of the enemy's capabilities. They were not driven to the galaxy's edge, Won Ho reported to Yuna during a late-night briefing. They chose exile. Our historical records suggest they voluntarily abandoned the core systems after achieving perfect warfare efficiency. What does that mean? Yuna asked, though she suspected she already knew the answer. It means they reached a point where conventional warfare became too easy for them. They could defeat any enemy using standard advanced tactics, so they removed themselves from galactic civilization to avoid accidentally destroying everyone else. And now they are back, Yuna said quietly. Not back, Won Ho corrected. Still out there, still practicing. 4 million years of uninterrupted military evolution in the harshest possible conditions. They have had time to perfect warfare in ways we cannot imagine. The training continued, despite the aliens' resistance. Slowly, grudgingly, the coalition forces began to understand basic human military concepts. The Vorthak learned that fear was not always the most effective weapon. The Nexari discovered that moving together was sometimes better than moving fast. The Gorvani found that many small hits could be more devastating than one large blow. But progress was slow and painful. The alien warriors had spent their entire careers relying on their species' special abilities. Learning to fight without those advantages felt like learning to breathe underwater. They do not trust the methods, reported Captain Dal Su-han after observing a joint training exercise. They perform the techniques correctly, but they do not believe in them. Belief comes with success, Yuna replied. Once they see these methods work in actual combat, they will understand. And if the methods do not work? Dalsu asked. Then we all die, Yuna said simply. But at least we will die fighting smart instead of fighting fancy. The breakthrough came during a large-scale simulation. The coalition forces faced a computer-generated enemy that used swarm tactics based on the battle data from destroyed colonies. For the first time, all the alien forces worked together using human-taught principles. The Vorthak advanced in coordinated fire teams instead of relying on fear effects. The Nexari used their teleportation to support the advance rather than operating independently. The Gorvani provided sustained covering fire instead of single devastating strikes. The Mentari maintained individual awareness while still sharing information. The simulation enemy, programmed to counter all known galactic warfare techniques, struggled against the coordinated assault. For the first time since the war began, coalition forces achieved a decisive victory against swarm-style tactics. It worked, breathed Captain Bo Kyung-jung as she watched the simulation results. It worked because they finally fought as a team, instead of as individual specialists, observed Sergeant Dong-hyun Park. Admiral Jin-woo Lee, who had observed the entire exercise, nodded slowly. The enemy has spent 4 million years perfecting their warfare against advanced tactics. They are not prepared for coordinated basic tactics performed by multiple species working together. That is our advantage, Yuna agreed. We have something they do not have anymore. We have diversity of thought combined with unity of purpose. They perfected warfare by becoming uniform. We might defeat them by staying different, but working together. Lieutenant Soo-jin Kim brought up the technical analysis of the modified weapon systems. The combined firepower is actually greater than the sum of individual advanced weapons. When all species coordinate their fire, the effect is multiplicative rather than additive. The whole is greater than the sum of its parts, Wonho added. That is a human military principle the predecessors might have forgotten in their pursuit of perfect individual capability. As the training continued, word came from the outer rim systems. The swarm had begun moving toward the core worlds. Long-range sensors detected massive fleet movements, ships moving in perfect formations toward the heart of galactic civilization. 6 weeks until they reach Nexus Prime, reported Commander Tae-min Choi. Maybe less if they increase their advance speed. Then we have 6 weeks to turn this coalition of specialists into an army of soldiers, Yuna said. 6 weeks to teach them that working together beats perfecting apart. She looked around the training facility where humans worked alongside a dozen different alien species, all learning the same basic lessons her own species had discovered thousands of years ago. Some truths, she realized, were universal. The question was whether they could learn those truths fast enough to matter. Outside the flagship's windows, the stars continued their ancient dance, unchanged by the approaching storm. But inside the ship, representatives of 13 different species worked together to remember what warfare really meant. It meant survival. And survival meant adaptation. And adaptation meant learning that sometimes the oldest ways were also the best ways. The Battle of Kepler Station began at 0600 hours Galactic Standard Time. Admiral Myung-soo Kang stood on the bridge of the Coalition command ship, watching the enemy fleet approach in perfect formation. The swarm had arrived exactly when the Eetzyor tactical computers predicted, moving in the same disciplined wedge patterns that had destroyed 7 star systems. Enemy contact bearing 270, distance 12 million kilometers, reported Navigation Officer Jae-yoon Park. 147 ships in standard attack formation. All stations report ready, Admiral, announced Commander Tae-min Choi from the tactical station. Coalition forces are positioned according to Captain Park's strategic plan. Myung-soo nodded, trying to hide his nervousness. This would be the first test of human tactical doctrine against the enemy that had proven unstoppable. Around him, officers from 13 different species worked at their stations, all trained in the same basic principles over the past 6 weeks. Admiral, came the voice of Commander Vex 9 Alpha from the Gorvani Heavy Cruiser Squadron. My ships are ready for maximum power bombardment. We can destroy their lead elements before they reach effective range. Negative, Commander, Myung-soo replied firmly. Follow the tactical plan. Sustained fire, overlapping fields, mutual support. Do not waste your power on single devastating shots. He could hear the frustration in the Gorvani commander's voice. This goes against all our training, Admiral. We are designed for overwhelming force application. Your overwhelming force failed at 7 previous battles, Myung-soo reminded him. Today we try coordination over power. Captain Yeon-seo. Oh led the 1st Combat Wing, a mixed squadron of human, Zelanti, and Nexari fighters. Her voice came across the communication channel, calm and professional. Strike Wing Alpha in position, Admiral. Ready to execute Maneuver Pattern 7. What is Maneuver Pattern 7? Asked Captain Blink 7 Fast of the Nexari fighters, his confusion clear in his transmitted voice. Simple energy management and positioning, Yeon-seo replied patiently. No teleportation, no harmonic attacks, no exotic maneuvers, just good flying and coordinated tactics. The swarm fleet continued its approach, maintaining perfect formation discipline. Their ships moved with mechanical precision, each vessel exactly positioned to provide maximum firepower and mutual support. It was beautiful in its efficiency and terrifying in its implications. Beginning attack run, announced Yeon-seo as her mixed squadron dove toward the enemy formation. The Zelanti pilots wanted to use their harmonic disruptor attacks, weapons that could shatter enemy hulls with focused sound waves. The Nexari pilots kept trying to teleport behind enemy ships for surprise attacks, but Yeon-seo kept them focused on basic fighter tactics, speed, positioning, and coordinated strikes. Crystal Song 7, maintain formation, she ordered as one of the Zelanti pilots began to charge his harmonic weapons. Use standard energy cannons only. Save your power for sustained combat. But my harmonic attack could destroy 3 enemy ships instantly, Crystal Song 7 protested. And leave you powerless for the next 10 minutes, Yeon-seo replied. Look at the enemy formation. They expect harmonic attacks. See how they have spaced their ships to minimize harmonic resonance damage? The Nexari pilot, Blink 7 Fast, flickered in and out of phase, preparing to teleport. I can appear directly behind their command ship and disable their control systems. Stay in formation, Yeon-seo ordered. They are probably tracking your teleportation signatures and have countermeasures prepared. As if to prove her point, the swarm ships began rotating their formations just as the coalition fighters approached. Their movements were precise and calculated, designed to counter the exotic attacks they expected. But they were not prepared for simple, coordinated fighter tactics. Yeon-seo led her squadron in a classic pincer movement, splitting into 2 groups that attacked from different angles while maintaining mutual fire support. The enemy fighters, programmed to counter teleportation strikes and harmonic attacks, struggled to respond to the straightforward assault. Enemy fighters breaking formation, reported Yeon-seo with satisfaction in her voice. They are trying to counter attacks that are not coming. On the ground, Kepler Station faced its own assault. Major Sang-min Yu commanded the defense, leading a mixed force of human marines, Vorthak shock troops, and Mentari psychic warriors. The enemy landing craft approached the station's docking. Bays in textbook formation, ready to face the fear attacks and psychic assaults they had encountered at previous battles. Remember, Sang-min told his troops over the communication system, no special abilities unless absolutely necessary. Basic fire and movement, mutual support, coordinated defense. The Vorthak warriors hissed their confusion. Major Yu, our fear pheromones could break their assault before they reach the station, and they probably have chemical filters ready, Sang-min replied. Look at their equipment scans. Those are environmental suits designed to counter biological warfare. The first wave of enemy troops entered the station through Docking Bay 7. They moved with perfect precision, their formations designed to minimize casualties from psychic attacks and chemical weapons. But they were not prepared for simple crossfire and coordinated movement. Squads 2 and 4, establish overlapping fire zones, Sang-min ordered. Squad 3, flank left and provide enfilade fire. No fancy tactics, just basic infantry movement. The Mentari warrior Thought Leader 7 sent a pulse of confusion through the psychic network. Major, I could disable their entire assault force with a single mental attack. and alert them to psychic attack methods, Sang Min replied. Keep your abilities in reserve. Fight with your weapon, not your mind. The battle raged for 6 hours. The swarm forces, expecting to counter advanced alien warfare techniques, found themselves facing fundamental military tactics they had not encountered in millennia. Their perfect responses to exotic attacks became liabilities when no exotic attacks came. Captain Yan Seo's fighter squadron achieved something no coalition force had managed in the entire war. They forced enemy fighters to retreat. The swarm. Pilots trained to counter every advanced fighter tactic in galactic history could not adapt to simple energy management and coordinated positioning. Enemy fighter wing withdrawing, reported Yan Seo, her voice filled with amazement. They appear to be regrouping for a different attack pattern. Let them regroup, Admiral Myung-soo replied. Maintain formation and continue coordinated strikes. Do not chase them or break discipline. On the ground, Major Sang Min's defense held against 3 separate assault waves. The swarm ground forces, masters at countering fear attacks and psychic warfare, struggled against simple suppressive fire and coordinated movement. Enemy ground forces are requesting orbital support, reported Intelligence Officer Wan Ho Nam from the command center. Their ground assault is failing for the first time in the war. But the real breakthrough came when the main fleet engagement began. The swarm battle line approached in perfect formation, ready to counter the quantum displacement attacks, temporal strikes, and energy-based psychological warfare they had faced at previous battles. Instead, they met coordinated fire from conventional weapons, overlapping fields of coverage, and mutual support between different ship types. The Gorvani heavy cruisers provided sustained fire support instead of single overwhelming strikes. The Kronoth ships maintained normal time flow and fought in linear formation. The Vorthak vessels used kinetic weapons instead of fear projectors. Enemy fleet is attempting to counter temporal attacks that are not occurring, reported Commander Taemin Choi with growing excitement. Their formations are optimized for exotic warfare defense, not conventional engagement. All ships maintain current tactical plan, Admiral Myung-soo ordered. Sustained fire, mutual support, no individual heroics. For the first time since the war began, a swarm fleet began to take significant casualties. Their ships, designed to counter advanced alien tactics, were vulnerable to sustained coordinated fire from conventional weapons. Their perfect formations became death traps when faced with simple enfilade fire and crossfire techniques. Enemy flagship is withdrawing, announced Navigation Officer Jae-yoon Park, her voice filled with disbelief. The entire enemy fleet is beginning a fighting withdrawal. Admiral Myung-soo allowed himself a small smile. Do not pursue. Hold position and consolidate our gains. But sir, protested Commander Vex 9 Alpha of the Gorvani Squadron, we could destroy their entire fleet if we press the attack, and walk into whatever trap they have prepared for pursuing forces. Myung-soo replied. We won this battle by being unpredictable. Let us not become predictable by chasing victory too far. The Battle of Kepler Station ended 12 hours after it began. For the first time in the war, a coalition force had achieved decisive victory against the swarm. The enemy fleet withdrew in good order, but they left behind damaged ships and, more importantly, damaged confidence. Casualty reports coming in, announced Medical Officer Dr. Hyejin Seo. Coalition losses, 12 ships damaged, 3 destroyed. Enemy losses, 27 ships destroyed, 15 heavily damaged. How is this possible? Asked Captain Blink 7 Fast, his Nexari form flickering with confusion. We used none of our advanced capabilities, yet we achieved better results than ever before. Because Captain In-ho Choi pressed himself against the bulkhead of the modified Nexari stealth ship as it phased through the outer edge of swarm territory. 3 weeks had passed since the victory at Kepler Station, and intelligence gathering had become the coalition's highest priority. They needed to understand their enemy better if they hoped to win the war. Phase drive holding steady, reported Lieutenant Commander Ji Eun-yang from the navigation station. We are currently invisible to most sensor types, but we cannot maintain this state indefinitely. How long do we have? In-ho asked. 6 hours maximum before the phase generators overheat, replied Chief Engineer Bongsu Nam. After that, we will be visible to any ship within 10,000 kilometers. The reconnaissance team consisted of 12 specialists from 4 different species, all volunteers for what everyone understood was likely a suicide mission. Dr. Kyung-ho Bae, a human military historian, worked alongside sensor specialist Flux 9 Minor of the Chronoth, while communications officer Sora Kim monitored enemy transmissions with the help of Thought Reader Beta, a Mentari intelligence analyst. Picking up multiple energy signatures ahead, announced Ji-un. Massive construction activity centered around what appears to be a former star system. Former star system? In-ho repeated. The star is still there, but everything else has been converted. Ji-un explained, her voice filled with awe. Planets, asteroids, even gas giants, all transformed into military installations. The stealth ship drifted closer, its sensors recording everything. What they found challenged every assumption the coalition had made about their enemy. The swarm had not just conquered this system, they had redesigned it for war. Analyzing construction patterns, reported Dr. Kyung-ho Bae as he studied the scanner data. These installations follow classical military engineering principles, but executed with perfect efficiency. Every structure serves multiple purposes. Every position provides mutual support for every other position. How many ships? In-ho asked. Thousands, Ji-un replied quietly. Maybe tens of thousands, all arranged in perfect geometric patterns that maximize both offensive capability and defensive coverage. Sergeant Yuna Lim, the team's ground warfare specialist, studied the formation data with growing concern. Captain, look at these movement patterns. Their ships are not just positioned for defense, they are positioned for training. Training? In-ho moved to study her display. Watch the smaller ships, Yuna explained. See how they move in precise formation drills? See how they practice coordinated maneuvers with mechanical precision? They are not just maintaining their forces. They are perfecting them. The stealth ship drifted deeper into the system, recording everything. What they witnessed over the next 4 hours changed their understanding of the swarm completely. This was not just a military force. It was a civilization that had evolved, beyond any purpose except warfare. My God, whispered Dr. Kyung-ho as he analyzed the data. Look at this. Every installation, every structure, every piece of technology is optimized for military efficiency. They have no civilian population, no non-military infrastructure, no wasted resources. What happened to their culture? Asked Sora Kim. What happened to their art, their science, their philosophy? They threw it away, replied Thought Reader Beta, the Mentari's large eyes glowing as he processed the psychic resonances from the enemy installations. I can sense the historical echoes. They deliberately abandoned everything that was not directly related to warfare. When? In-ho asked. Approximately 3 million years ago, the Mentari continued. They made a collective decision to become the perfect military force. Everything else was considered weakness and eliminated. Lieutenant Commander Ji-un brought the stealth ship to within visual range of a training facility. Through the enhanced optical sensors, they could watch swarm forces conducting combat exercises. What they saw was simultaneously impressive and terrifying. They move like machines, observed Sergeant Yuna. Perfect coordination, flawless execution, zero wasted motion. Every soldier knows exactly what every other soldier will do at every moment. Run combat scenario analysis, In-ho ordered. Compare their training methods to coalition standard practices. The computer analysis took several minutes to complete. When the results appeared on the main display, the reconnaissance team fell silent. Efficiency rating, 98.7%, reported the computer. Error rate, 0.01%. Adaptation coefficient, 0.03%. What does that mean? Asked Chief Engineer Bongsu. It means they are almost perfect, Dr. Kyung-ho replied, but also almost completely inflexible. Look at the adaptation coefficient. When presented with unexpected situations, they show virtually no ability to modify their responses. They are like a sword that has been sharpened so much it can cut through anything, observed thought reader Beta, but has become too brittle to bend. The stealth ship continued its reconnaissance, documenting training facilities, ship construction, yards, and weapon testing ranges. Everything was designed with mathematical precision and operated with mechanical efficiency. It was warfare reduced to its purest form. "Captain," Sora Kim called from the communication station. "I am detecting something unusual. The enemy is broadcasting training scenarios on multiple frequencies. Can you decode them?" "Already working on it," Sora replied, her fingers dancing over the control interface. "These appear to be historical battle recordings. They are studying every engagement the Coalition has fought against them." The decoded transmissions revealed the full scope of the swarm's analytical capabilities. They had recorded every moment of every battle, studying Coalition tactics with the intensity of scientists examining a new species. "They know everything about our methods," Sora reported, her voice tense. "Ship movements, weapon signatures, communication patterns. They have detailed analysis of every technique we used at Kepler Station." "Are they adapting their tactics based on this analysis?" Inho asked. "Yes and no," Sora replied after studying more of the transmissions. "They are developing counters for our methods, but the counters follow the same rigid patterns as everything else they do." Dr. Kyung-ho leaned over her shoulder to study the decoded data. "Fascinating. They approach tactical adaptation the same way they approach everything else: mathematical precision, mechanical implementation, zero deviation from established patterns." "What does that mean for us?" Inho asked. "It means they will be ready for exactly what we did at Kepler Station," Yuna replied grimly. "But they might not be ready for something completely different." The reconnaissance team continued monitoring the enemy training exercises. What they observed was 4 million years of military evolution taken to its logical extreme. Every swarm soldier moved with identical precision. Every ship followed identical flight patterns. Every formation maintained identical spacing and timing. "They have achieved perfect military efficiency," observed Flux 9 Minor, the Chronoth specialist. "But perfection requires predictability. They cannot be perfect and adaptable at the same time." "Look at this," Dr. Kyung-ho said, highlighting a section of the training data. "They are practicing responses to human tactics, but only the exact human tactics we used at Kepler Station. They are not preparing for variations or modifications." "Because they do not understand the concept of improvisation," added thought reader Beta. "Their entire civilization is built around predetermined responses to known situations." The stealth ship's sensors detected something else: massive construction projects deeper in the system. Shipyards that dwarfed anything in Coalition space, turning out vessels with assembly line efficiency. But all the ships were identical, built to the same specifications, armed with the same weapons, crewed by soldiers trained in the same methods. "How many ships are they building?" Inho asked. "Approximately 50 per day," Ji-eun replied after analyzing the construction data. "All identical battle cruisers, all following the same design that has remained unchanged for over 1 million years. They found the perfect design and stopped innovating," observed Chief Engineer Bong-soo. "Maximum efficiency, minimum variation. That is their strength," said Dr. Kyung-ho. "But also their weakness. They cannot surprise us because they cannot surprise themselves. Every ship will behave exactly like every other ship." The reconnaissance, team's most important discovery, came during their final hour in the system. They detected a massive fleet movement. Thousands of ships departing the training facilities in perfect formation, all heading toward Coalition space. "Fleet composition analysis complete," reported Ji-eun. 2,473. Vessels all following identical movement patterns. Estimated arrival at Nexus Prime, 18 days. "The final assault," Inho said quietly. "They are bringing everything they have. But they are bringing it in exactly the way we would expect," observed Yuna. "Perfect formations, predetermined tactics, mechanical precision. They will execute their assault flawlessly, but they will execute exactly the assault we can prepare for. As the stealth ship began its journey back to Coalition space, the reconnaissance team compiled their reports. What they had discovered was both terrifying and hopeful. The swarm represented the ultimate evolution of warfare, perfected beyond anything the galaxy had ever seen. Supreme Admiral Jae-hyun Song stood on the bridge of the human dreadnought Seoul's Thunder, watching the largest fleet in galactic history approach Nexus Prime. The swarm had brought everything: 2,173 ships moving in perfect geometric formation, their approach so precise it looked like a mathematical equation made manifest in space. Enemy fleet maintaining standard assault formation, reported Fleet Tactical Officer Commander Min-ho Shin. No deviations from predicted patterns. They are following their training protocols exactly. Just as Captain Choi's reconnaissance team predicted, Jae-hyun replied, studying the tactical display. Around Nexus Prime, the Coalition had assembled every available ship from 13 different species. Not the largest fleet in numbers, but certainly the most diverse in tactics. All squadron commanders, this is Admiral Song, he broadcast to the entire Coalition force. Remember your training, fight smart, not fancy, adapt, improvise, overcome. The enemy expects perfection from us, give them chaos instead. Captain Haewon Park led Fighter Wing Alpha, a mixed squadron that included human pilots alongside aliens who had spent months learning to abandon their advanced capabilities. Alpha Wing ready, Admiral. Standard energy management, coordinated positioning, no exotic maneuvers. Confirmed, Alpha Wing. Remember, the enemy has studied every advanced fighter technique in the galaxy, but they have not studied pilots who choose not to use those techniques. On the surface of Nexus Prime, Colonel Yoon Young Lee coordinated the ground defense with a mixture of confidence and concern. The planet's defense grid included weapons from a dozen different species, all now operating under human tactical doctrine. Ground Defense Command ready, Admiral, she reported. All units trained in coordinated fire patterns and mutual support. We have abandoned species-specific tactics in favor of integrated defense. Understood, Colonel. The enemy will expect to counter Vorthak fear weapons and Mentari psychic attacks. Give them crossfire and suppression instead. The swarm fleet continued its approach with mechanical precision. Every ship held exact formation. Every movement followed predetermined patterns. Every response matched their 4-million-year-old training protocols. It was warfare as science, reduced to mathematical perfection. Enemy fleet entering maximum range, announced Navigation Officer Yeon-ju Kim. All ships are moving to predetermined attack positions. No variations detected. Fleet commanders, execute maneuver pattern chaos, Jae-hyun ordered. What happened next would have horrified military strategists from any advanced civilization. Instead of meeting the enemy's perfect formation with equally perfect formations, the Coalition fleet scattered in all directions. Ships broke formation, squadrons split apart, and coordinated movements gave way to what looked like complete disorder. What are they doing? Demanded Commander Vex 9 Alpha of the Gorvani heavy cruisers, his confusion clear over the communication channel. They are being unpredictable, replied Admiral Song calmly. The enemy has calculated responses to every standard fleet maneuver. They have not calculated responses to chaos. The swarm fleet's perfect precision became a liability. Their ships moved to intercept formations that no longer existed, concentrated fire on positions that had been abandoned, and executed flawless tactical responses to attacks that were not coming. Captain Haewon led her fighter squadron in an attack run that violated every principle of proper fighter tactics. Instead of maintaining formation, the pilots spread out randomly. Instead of concentrating their fire, they attacked from dozens of different angles. Instead of using coordinated maneuvers, each pilot improvised their own approach. Enemy fighters attempting to counter formation attacks, Haewon reported with satisfaction. But we are not flying in formation. Their targeting systems cannot lock onto our attack pattern because we do not have one. The results were devastating. Swarm fighters trained to counter every known fighter tactic found themselves unable to respond to tactics that changed moment by moment. Their perfect interceptor runs missed targets that were no longer where calculations said they should be. Fighter Wing Beta, execute random pattern 7, Jae-hyun ordered. "Admiral," came the confused reply from Wing Beta's commander. "What, is random pattern 7? "Whatever you think it should be," Jae-hyun replied. "Make it up as you go along. The important thing is that if you do not know what you are going to do next, neither does the enemy." Commander Min-ho Shin coordinated the capital ship engagement from the flagship's tactical center. The coalition's heavy cruisers and battleships abandoned their traditional formations and began what could only be described as organized confusion. Gorvani Squadron. Execute overlapping fire pattern against enemy grid 7-7, Min-ho ordered. Vorthak Squadron. Provide covering fire from position random. Kronoth Squadron. Maintain normal time flow and attack from wherever seems like a good idea. "This is insane," protested Commander Vex 9 Alpha. "We are abandoning all tactical discipline." "We are abandoning predictable tactical discipline," Min-ho corrected. "The enemy's perfect responses require perfect predictability. We are being perfectly unpredictable instead." The turning point came when Colonel Yoon Young realized the enemy's greatest vulnerability. The swarm ground forces, approaching the planet, in textbook assault formation, were executing a perfect planetary invasion. Every move was calculated, every position was optimized, every response was predetermined. "All ground units," she broadcast, "abandon the defense plan." "Ma'am?" came the startled response from Major Dong-soo Park, commander of the Eastern Defense Sector. "Abandon the plan," Yoon Young repeated. "Every unit, every squad, every individual. Soldier. Fight however you think best. Use whatever tactics seem right to you. The only order is that there are no orders." What followed was the most chaotic ground battle in galactic history. Human Marines used covering fire and movement. Vorthak, warriors charged with kinetic weapons instead of fear pheromones. Mentari soldiers fought as individuals instead of collective consciousness. Nixari troops used their teleportation to provide support instead of independent strikes. The swarm ground forces, programmed to counter coordinated defense patterns, could not adapt to defense that had no pattern. Their assault formations, perfect for overwhelming organized resistance, became death traps when faced with fighters who attacked from unexpected directions using unpredictable methods. "Enemy ground assault is faltering," reported Major Dong-soo with amazement. "They keep trying to counter tactics we are not using." "Because," Yoon Young replied as she watched the battle unfold, "they forgot the most important tactical principle of all. The enemy gets a vote." In space, the fleet battle reached its climax. The swarm's perfect formation had become a rigid cage that trapped them in predetermined responses. Every time they moved to counter coalition tactics, the coalition changed tactics. Every time they concentrated fire on coalition positions, those positions were abandoned. Every time they executed flawless maneuvers, those maneuvers proved useless against targets that refused to cooperate. "Enemy flagship is attempting to coordinate a new formation," reported Commander Min-ho. "They are trying to adapt their tactics." "Then we adapt faster," replied Admiral Song. "All ships execute whatever attack pattern your captain thinks will work. No coordination, no predetermined maneuvers, no predictable responses." Captain Haewon's fighter squadron achieved something that would have been impossible using standard tactics. By abandoning formation discipline and fighting as individuals who supported each other instinctively, they overwhelmed enemy fighters that were programmed to counter every type of coordinated attack. "Enemy fighter resistance collapsing," she reported. "They cannot counter individual initiative because they do not understand the concept." The swarm's perfect military machine began to break down, not through superior firepower or advanced technology, but through simple chaos. Their responses, calibrated for 4 million years of perfect warfare, could not handle imperfect opponents who refused to fight perfectly. "Enemy fleet is beginning to withdraw," announced Navigation Officer Yeonju. "Multiple ships showing damage, from attacks they could not predict or counter." "Let them go," ordered Admiral Song. "Do not pursue. They will analyze this battle and try to develop counters to chaos. Let them try." As the surviving swarm ships retreated in perfect formation, their withdrawal as precise as their attack had been, The coalition fleet remained scattered across the battlefield. Ships damaged, formations broken, tactical discipline abandoned but victorious. "How is this possible?" asked Commander Vex 9 Alpha, his voice filled with wonder. "We violated every principle of proper warfare and achieved total victory." "Because," replied Captain Una Park from her position in the Tactical Command Center, "we remembered something the enemy forgot. Warfare is not about perfection. It is about winning." The Battle of Nexus Prime ended 18 hours after it began. The Swarm, masters of perfect warfare, retreated into the darkness of space, defeated by an enemy that had chosen to be imperfect. In the aftermath, as the coalition counted their casualties and assessed the damage, Admiral Song called his commanders together for a final briefing. "The enemy will return," he told them. "They will study this battle and develop new tactics, but they will still be perfect and we will still be chaotic.